Hey everybody, it's your man James, Basic One Treasure, back again with some more video action for you here. We're going live. We're going to be talking about the box office totals for the Odyssey that happened last weekend, and what it means for the film, what it means for its success or lack thereof, what it means for Nolan, what it means for the industry, and a little bit of other stuff that I'm going to get into about this, because it's not always just about the box office, but it's a good key indicator of what things are going to happen. So let's get on into it today. And I just want to thank you all for joining me today. I hope you get something out of this. And a little later, I will be putting a link in the live stream so that you guys can join me and join me live if you decide to do so. Because, I always want to hear what the people got to say. It's not always just about me. It can't be. I don't want it to be like that. Not around here. So, and since that is the case, let's get me off the screen and we'll start sharing some stuff here. So let's share the screen, and we'll start off with this right here, probably the most important segment that we can share. And this is, of course, is the box office totals for the Odyssey. Let's go with that layout. And as we go down here now, you can see here the numbers. These are numbers up to yesterday, so this includes the last couple of days. So I don't want to go with that. I'm talking about the weekend. So let's go here. We got the Thursday preview, and then here's through the weekend. And it was $123.5 million, which, is decent. That's not a bad number for this film. They needed that, though. If they were going to hope of having a chance at a profit for this film, they needed an opening weekend like that. And if you guys recall, there's a lot of people out there championing at the bit now about this, saying, oh, yes, woke still sells. You guys are stupid. You chuds, we owned you. I mean, no one I saw, and again, you saw me when I did my last live stream talking about the Odyssey. I said I expected a strong opening weekend for many reasons. First of all, it's a Christopher Nolan film, and he has a lot of goodwill with the public because he doesn't generally turn out garbage. So people want to go see a Nolan film just on the strength of his name alone. Two, this is a star-studded, blockbuster type of movie for the summer, which there's always, they call it a tent pole. That's what this is supposed to be, a tent pole movie. That's another reason. You got the fact that the controversy around it is going to draw some more attention in, of course, as always. So, you have all these factors. And on top of that, it has no real competition. I mean, what's out right now is really going to have a chance of denting into the Odyssey. You know what? Supergirl, Disclosure Day, Moana live action, they've all bombed. So it's opening in a period where it's like the only thing that has any buzz around it. So with all that in your favor, I would hope you could come out with a strong opening weekend. If you didn't, I mean, that would really be a bad indictment. But while this is a good number, and I can't deny that it isn't, it doesn't tell you the whole story, because while they needed a number like this, that's not the end of the story. That's just the beginning. That's just where it starts. Because let's take a look at some other movies that are also in the similar vein of this one, in the fact of what they can bring. And let's go with another one that's come out very recently. Toy Story 5. Another one very popular, and again, we're going to go with the first opening. You look at the first opening; they got their preview, and then the 3-day weekend, and they had almost $160 million. Now that's $30 to $40 million more than the Odyssey got. And as you can see here, it's on track to. It's still in theaters now. It's probably going to end up just breaking past that $1 billion mark. So a $1 billion effort, and again, strong opening. Stronger than the Odyssey, which, is the one that everyone is now all focused upon. But again, this isn't the only one. This isn't some fluke, because there was another film that came out this year that also shows this. And that is Super Mario Brothers Galaxy movie, which came out earlier this year. And you see, again, we're going to go down to the first weekend. Now, this had a Wednesday opening, so we'll cut off that Wednesday. We'll be fair. So that's $34 million off. It's their total here at the end of the weekend was $190. So take about $35 million off. That puts it at what, 156 million, pretty close to the Toy Story 5 box office. And as you can see, for its run, it Just like I said with Toy Stories, it just broke that $1 billion mark. And see, this is important because this is the kind of number that they want to see for the Odyssey, probably even more than that. Because again, if we go with the numbers, what they've told us about the Odyssey, 250 million to produce it and 125 in marketing, and that's going with the numbers they're telling us. And as we've all seen in recent times, these studios are not exactly very forthcoming and honest about those numbers, for various reasons. But if we take them at face value on that, that's $375 million for production and marketing for the Odyssey. So that means for them to break even, they have to hit $750 to $775 million just to hit the break even mark. Now, again, we're gonna go back. We're gonna go back to the Odyssey's numbers here, so you can see that for yourself. And we're going to show you the Odyssey numbers once more. And here they are. You see, like I said, there it is. It's $123 million in that opening weekend. And again, if we go with the total numbers, up here, even with the ads of the last couple of days, that's $327 million. Now, you'd say to yourself, oh, well, James, that's already that's almost their entire costs so far. Yeah, if they got all the money, which, of course, they don't. They get about 50% of the domestic box office and around 40% of the international. Some places are a little more, some places a little less, but we'll go around 40. So with all this added up, they're at about 125, $130 million of this is theirs. Still a pretty far cry from what they want. They've barely, if anything, made the marketing back. That's still $250 million in profit that they need to make to get their costs back, and then then they'll start to make money. So again, that's why that 750 to 775 million is the number. That's what they have to make to break even, and then they get into the black, as it were. They get into profit territory. Now, again, with this number being where it is today, what do I think? Do I think they will do that? I don't think this movie will flop. I think, barring, it would have to be a case of all of a sudden this weekend totally bombs out with, like, say, over 70% drop. And then next weekend you got Spider-Man coming out. And if it sucks all the oxygen out of the room and it gets nothing there, then the movie could be in trouble and it may flop. But that's what it would take. And so I don't think this is going to flop. I think these numbers indicate that the movie will end up in the profitable territory. The question is it going to make the kind of money that the studios are banking on it making? Because again, like you saw with the other examples I had, we had Toy Story 5, which is almost to $1 billion. Super Mario Galaxy was over $1 billion. This is what the studios want. They want to see that kind of number here. Are they going to get it? See, that's the thing. And I'm not sure if that's the case, because that's the true test here is this movie going to have legs? Is this movie going to keep producing the way it did in that opening weekend? Because I'm seeing a lot of mixed reviews. Yes, there are people that are saying it's an epic, it's great, it's a masterpiece. And then there are people who used words to describe it like boring, drawn out, pretentious. These are not good things. So it seems very mixed among the public and the reviewing of what this movie actually is. And you can't trust Rotten Tomatoes because they've nuked themselves so badly after changing the rules the way they did back during the Captain Marvel debacle, and so you can't really trust them. But if you trust other places, I've seen like Metacritic, I think it has it as a 6 or a 6.5. I think IMDb is like 8.2 right now. I mean, it's far cry from the 10 masterpieces some of these places are saying it is. So you got to take it with a grain of salt. But with a mixed review going on for this film, for it to have the numbers it is a bit impressive. You would expect it to do much worse, given that. And then so the question will be: is it going to have legs? Are we going to see them continue on this trend that they've started in this opening weekend? That's the real question. Because again, I know there's a lot of things in the favor of this film, and one of them is the only real competitor it has coming up is Spider-Man. After the new Spider-Man film drops, what's coming out after that could be like a real competitor to take the eyeballs and the money away from the Odyssey? I mean, the only thing I can think of is Godzilla -0, and that's not until November. So you're talking a 4-month run with no competition, see, this is why I'm thinking that the film is not going to bomb. I mean, it deserves to bomb, but it's not going to. And so I think that's why. But again, I'm going to show one more sets of numbers here to show you exactly how, even though the numbers are not bad for the Odyssey, they're not exactly where the studios may want them to be. Because there's one other example here. Because the other two I just showed, Toy Story and Super Mario Brothers Galaxy, those are not R-rated movies. Those are movies that anybody can go to, kids and young people. So it's easier to fill butts and seats to get to $1 billion in sales. An R-rated movie does have a tougher road to hoe in that respect. It's not impossible to do it, but it is sort of a tough road to hoe. And this here is a movie that also was rated R that did break $1 billion. It's Deadpool and Wolverine. Got almost $1.4 billion. And if we go down again to the opening weekend, they got the Thursday just like they did, and we go to that end of the opening weekend, $211 million. Now that's $90 million more than the Odyssey made. Now, see, these are the kind of numbers that the studios want to see right here. These are the numbers. And as you saw, the Odyssey didn't do that, and that ended up getting them this. So it's far from a sure shot that this movie is going to produce the way the studios are banking on it producing. And that, to me, is a real important thing to note, because it's all about what the studios think matters in the end. Because we can sit here and speculate all we want about what's good and what's bad and what's not and all that, but when it comes down to it, it's always the studios that are going to make the ultimate decision on that. But now that I've pointed out the numbers to you, now we're going to get a little more into what's being said. And again, the reason you're seeing so much champing at the bit about what the movie has done so far in this opening weekend, whether they're like celebrating it as like some giant, victory, is not so much for the movie itself, not because of Nolan, not because of great movie making, but for much more political-minded reasons, shall we say. And we're going to get into some of that right now, because, again, I think it's important you see the context of what people are saying who are calling this a victory. They're calling it a masterpiece, a success, where they are. And I think this stuff will kind of show you that it's not exactly what they think it is and what they want you to believe it is. And here's our first bit here from Vanity Fair. We got this piece here that says, the Odyssey's epic box office haul breaks the go woke, go broke myth. Christopher Nolan's film made over $264 million this weekend. That's globally, not just domestically. Once again, proving flops like Ghostbusters and The Little Mermaid weren't due to politics, and people will pay for a great yarn. Now, this is key here, because you're going to see, as they're trying to champion this as proving go woke, go broke is a myth and always has been, they're going to do something that you probably didn't expect them to do. And I'm going to point this out because it's important to note these things when they do them. Let's see. Where's that? Perhaps a handful of trolls, a small group that includes the richest man in the world, because they got a hit on Elon Musk, of course, has sworn off Nolan's film because it has the audacity to feature both a black woman and a trans man. Well, of course, that's not the only reason people have issues with the Odyssey. There's a lot of other reasons, but of course, you got to brush them aside. But loud as their voices may be, the actual grosses prove that they couldn't dampen the Odyssey's prospects. Well, again, that still remains to be seen. One could take this outcome as evidence that the right-wing campaign against the film actually helped it by turning it into a liberal cause célèbre, if one were interested in being wrong. Oh, so again, notice this, the right-wing campaign, not people who were critical of the film. If you're critical of the film, you got to be a right-winger. You see, you can see the tact they're already taking with this. The real truth is that normal people, regular folks whose brains haven't been pickled by constant exposure to the worst opinions on the internet, would that include those from Vanity Fair, are unaware of this manufactured controversy. Manufactured. Not like there's real controversy because of what he did. It's just all made up. And even if they have heard about it, they certainly aren't letting it influence their viewing habits. In a just world, one governed by logic and reason, by Zeus's law, the Odyssey's success would put to bed an old conservative bugbear, the notion that Hollywood movies bomb when they are overly influenced by the political and qualities this cohort defines as woke, a concept so broad as to be essentially meaningless. So now they're trying to say woke means nothing. When you call something woke, you're not talking about a specific idea or ideology or conception. It's just a meaningless term. See, again, look at how they're trying to play this down. And again, they never would have done it. Before, woke was a great thing. They championed woke. And now all of a sudden, woke, it just means nothing. Continuing. This idea, rendered later as a pithy catchphrase, go woke, go broke, dates back to roughly to the intense misogynistic backlash to Paul Feig's all-female 2016 Ghostbusters reboot, a wave that, in retrospect, feels like a harbinger for where that year's presidential election was heading. So you got to get in about Trump. You got to make it about Trump somehow. See, these people are so transparent. But here's where we're going to get into the stuff that's important. Ghostbusters was indeed a financial disappointment. The movie lost millions of dollars, killing a potential franchise in its cradle. But Ghostbusters didn't fail because it was woke. It failed because the movie was a bad movie and only fitfully funny action comedy that couldn't figure out what it wanted to be or say. Now, this is major. This is major. This right here. They're admitting now that the movie won for, first of all, they told us that Ghostbusters 2016 wasn't woke. Remember that? First they said, oh, it's just a bunch of idiots. This movie isn't woke. They just hate women. This is just a bunch of misogynists. And then it didn't fail because, it lifted up women and gave them a voice and blah, 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 all these things. Now they're willing to say, and it was never a bad movie. It's just the trolls online attacked it. That's what it was. And they created a controversy and destroyed it. Those evil, misogynistic, right-wing trolls. But now they're saying it was a bad movie. Well, wait a minute. I thought it was a good movie because that's what they said at the time, remember? Oh, this is a great movie. Paul Feig is awesome. Seeing these women, women bosses, they kick ass. Now they're willing to admit that it's a bad movie. Why? Because now they have something that actually may end up being successful. They have a woke film that might actually show some signs of success. And now it's okay to throw Ghostbusters 2016 under the bus. And it goes on. They go even further with it. Perhaps that result emboldened the complainers, leading them to believe in their own power to sink a big studio production. And subsequent years would, in fact, be dotted by allegedly woke films that underperformed, like Disney's 2023 remake of The Little Mermaid and the 2025 Pixar bomb Elio. Yet, a 2025 study of woke-adjacent content in cinema, whatever that means, again, because it's a meaningless term, failed to find a definitive link between progressive themes and box office performance. Of course, is that because there isn't one there, or because they just didn't bother to look to that aspect, to try to find an answer to that? See, that makes a big difference. I think it's probably much more the latter, because they knew if they did, they'd probably find out there was a correlation, and then that would really make them look bad. So just to say, well, we just did a thing, and we found no correlations because, we didn't really look for any, is more likely the situation there. But continuing. And if you look back at the woke movies that have flopped, you'll find the only thing that really unites these projects is their quality. The Little Mermaid was flat and perfunctory. Elio probably would have been better if it had been more woke. Meanwhile, recent box office history is studded with overly progressive, identity-focused films that have positively minted money, from Black Panther to Barbie to Wicked. The difference? Those movies were good. So now they're trying to differentiate. Oh, well, woke movies, they're bad ones, but yet they all defended all the woke movies before. They defended Ghostbusters 2016. They defended The Little Mermaid. They defended Snow White. They've defended so many. And again, if woke means nothing, well, then how does she know that Black Panther, Barbie, and Wicked are woke? You see, the hypocrisy of these people. They told us for years that the only reason to not like Ghostbusters 2016 is because you're a misogynist. The only reason not to like the black remake of The Little Mermaid live action is because you're racist. They told us these things, that's the only reason you could not like them. And now they're admitting these are just bad films. Which is what all of us who complained at the time said. These are horrible films. Yeah, the wokeness makes them even worse, but they're bad on their own. But see, they didn't hear any of that because they were all in. The media was all in with the wokeness. And so they said, we got to defend the woke. But now that they have a movie that they think is a champion now, this was a successful movie, now we'll pull out, ones that we can call woke, whether they are or not, and say, this proves that go woke, go broke. Except, I'm surprised she didn't pull out Captain Marvel as a successful woke film. But again, why not? Well, probably because that one, in that case, it was sandwiched between two of the most anticipated sequels in, film history. And they told you needed to watch this if you want to understand what happens to bridge that gap between the two films. Of course, then people found out it wasn't. And what happened with the next film that had Captain Marvel? One of the biggest bombs ever. So you see, yeah, it does make a difference. Wokeness does kill. It does. Woke can make you go broke. Very much so. But again, look at what they're doing now. They're willing to throw some of their woke compatriots under the bus because now they think they have a better champion in Nolan's Odyssey. That tells you the mentality of these people and what you're seeing with these people. But, Vanity Fair isn't the only one. They're not the only ones who are, hitting up on this. We have others who are also trying to sort of like, let's say, shall we say, rewrite history, quite literally. And here we are with this little article I found from Yahoo Entertainment. It says, sorry, the Odyssey has always been kind of woke. Really? The Odyssey woke? Explain that to me. And they do. They say, given that the Odyssey has been told and retold, interpreted and reinterpreted so many times, do we really know what the underlying mythology is? So no, the Odyssey is not history, but historically significant, and Nolan is cunning in the ways he unspools the various twists and turns that have, for about 2,800 years now, captivated the public and held up a mirror to the way various cultures understand themselves. Now that's the key here. Held up a mirror to the way various cultures understand themselves. Now, they're saying that this proves that the Odyssey is woke because, in his time when Homer wrote this, it was a progressive type of story. Well, maybe for 3,000 years ago, but if we go with what the actual text says, is that progressive today? No, in fact, it's very much the opposite. They would call this, backwards caveman thinking, if you actually went by what the Odyssey text actually says. But again, this is what they're doing. They're giving away the game. They're telling you what the real intent of this movie is. And it's not to make a successful movie, a yarn that people can enjoy, or to be a faithful adaptation to a classic piece of literature. No. It's all about holding up the mirror to the various cultures and how they understand them. They want to change the understanding of what Western culture is. So we're going to take one of the key foundational texts that people base a lot of, the mythology and the ideology of Western culture on stuff like the Odyssey. And we're going to say now it's very progressive. So therefore, progressivism is what the culture is. Even if that's not the case, this is what they're trying to rewrite history. And they get this, one of these translators here, Daniel Mendelsohn, who comes in. He goes, Nolan, based on a recent time profile, seems more surprised by the current cultural feuding, including whether it's woke to cast black and trans actors as part of his stacked ensemble, or the particular boat architecture in the film, more hulking and Viking-like than the smaller Mycelian galleys, the critics say, or yes, the shading of a particular king's armor. Mendelsohn, for one, is amused by all these bros suddenly worrying about Greek culture. So you see, there it is. They're trying to downplay this. Is all the stuff is, who cares? These guys all worried about. They're all worried about nothing. maybe what it is they've seen this play out too many other times in too many other formats and with too many other IPs, with too many other, cultural touchstones that these progressive scumbags want to try to twist and turn to fit their ideological agendas. Maybe that's why they notice this. Maybe that's why it matters to them so much. That is in part because Homer's Odyssey has always been woke, or put another way, progressive, changing with the times, alive to how we decode its symbols. Here are the elements of the Odyssey that have always been malleable. How scholars view them and how Nolan shapes and reshapes their visual depiction in this film. There it is. Notice how he shapes and reshapes. Well, if it's being based from the text, shouldn't you shape it off what the text says and not off what you want it to? Why do you have to reshape the text? Just go by what's there. But see, again, that's not the thing, because see, the Odyssey has always been woke, or put another way, progressive. This is what they're talking about. This is what this ultimately this movie is about. This is why they were so scared that this movie would flop, because that's what this is about. This is what this is about, making it say that Western culture has always been progressive, it's always been woke, and anyone who doesn't see it that way, they're wrong. And if this movie flopped, they would see that as a rebuke of their view this way. But the fact that it looks like it's not going to flop now they feel emboldened. Oh, yes, now I know. Yes, this is what it. Whoa, woke wins. We've always been woke. This is what they're doing. This is what it's all about. And, we need to understand this. This is. Like I say, I've talked about this in many other ways. I've talked about it with comics. I've talked about it with lots of other stuff. But this is what they do. This is what they try to change what things actually are to fit the narratives they want them to fit, even if they don't really fit that narrative. And again, Nolan, he went very far in what he changed in this film. And we're going to see that here, because they even noted, how Christopher Nolan changed the Odyssey's ending. And let's get down to the bit here. Yeah, here we go. How does Homer end the Odyssey? The biggest change Nolan makes in his film is the elimination of the gods as tangible characters. Zeus, Poseidon, Hermes, Helios, among others, are referenced but not depicted on screen, including during the confrontation with Penelope's suitors. In the poem, Odysseus receives help from Athena, who uses her power to make him stronger and taller and to divert his enemies' weapons. The film is less faithful to the source material in this way, but by making the gods an intangible concept, it presents a more grounded interpretation of the story. So there it is. We're taking away the fantastic stuff, which is, of course, the whole point of Greek mythology is the fantastic elements, and we're going to ground it in a more, a more grounded interpretation. And so Nolan says, one of the things I needed to crack was how to approach mythological elements in a real-world sort of way. The breakthrough creatively in thinking about the gods was that everything that is now explained by science was once supernatural. Lightning, thunder, earthquakes, volcanoes. People are literally seeing the gods everywhere. Not even the evidence of gods. They're seeing the actions of the gods. Homer's poem also represents Penelope and Odysseus' reunion differently, which is a small part. But then we get to this. Telemachus orders the hanging of 12 enslaved women who served Penelope. Telemachus accuses the women of sleeping with some of the suitors and declares them disloyal and untrustworthy. Nolan's film thankfully excises this element. So again, why? Why was it? Why no explanation for why it's thankfully excised? Just that they did. And then let's see. And then we get to the people of the sea. Most of the other changes in the film are relatively minor, but Nolan makes two crucial additions. The first is the young Greek soldier Sinon, played by Elliot Page, who doesn't appear in Homer's Odyssey, but is a character in ancient myth and Virgil's Aeneid. Nolan borrowed the older stories about Sinon, who was said to have convinced the Trojans to accept the horse by posing as a defector. Now, again, as you saw with removing the gods, he's just changing up stuff willy-nilly the way he wants it. He wanted a movie that was grounded, he said, grounded in like reality. But that's not what the Odyssey is. The Odyssey is an epic that has gods, that has these things. And Sinon was not a part of that. Why would you put him in? This doesn't make sense. Why did you remove the gods? It doesn't make sense. Nolan also introduced the idea of the people from the sea. That idea doesn't appear in Homer's poem, but the mysterious sea people are associated with the late Bronze Age collapse. The people from the sea are essentially these marauders who some believe brought about the collapse of civilization, but nobody knows their lost history. Nobody knows who they were, and there's not a lot of information about it. There's a lot of speculation. It's pretty credible, and it's a pretty credible interpretation of history to say that the people from the sea didn't even really exist, and that this is really just a socioeconomic evolution. So now just flat out denying the stuff that's in the story, saying, well, the story that's not even real. Doesn't know. And you say to yourself, why is he doing this? Well, because it's all about breaking down Odysseus. That's the real difference between Nolan's Odyssey and Homer's. In Homer's, Odysseus is powerful, kind of like cunning, very, very, strategic, a little wily, things that he does in Homer's version are based on that. Whereas Nolan wants a character who is broken down. They want to make him, guilt-ridden and just a not so great person. And that's key here, a not so great person. And I'm going to show you that in a minute here. So, so you do things like, for example, Calypso. In the beginning of the film here, she has him on the island feeding him lotus blossoms to keep him amnesiac so she can keep him because she's obsessed with him. But then she just decides on her own, of her own accord, to let him go. Which makes no sense. That's not what the character does. In the actual text of Homer, it is Zeus who shows up and chastises her for taking a human lover and demands that she let him go or suffer the consequences. It's the will of the gods that makes her give up Odysseus. Not her own volition, not her own agency. See, but that's why it has to be that way. Because in a woke version, you can't have women being subordinate to men. No, women are equal to men, if not better. So she has to do this of her own accord. And that goes directly against what happened in Homer's version. Then you have the Cyclops. Probably what people say is the best scene in the movie. But here's the thing. In Homer's version, the Cyclops spoke. And he even talked to Odysseus when he asked him his name. Odysseus says, I'm nobody. And so when he gouges out his eye and he screams, they've attacked me, they've blinded me. And the others ask, hey, who did this? He goes, nobody. Again, showing the wiliness of Odysseus to call himself nobody so that when that happens, he says, who does it? Nobody did it. So no one takes it seriously. But again, in Nolan's version, the Cyclops doesn't talk to Odysseus. He never tells him that I'm nobody. Because, see, again, that shows Odysseus as a clever guy, as someone strategic. And that's not what Nolan wants. He wants a broken down man, a man filled with regret and guilt. And that's why it goes that way. You see, he's altering this to bring down the character of Odysseus. That's what this is all about. And again, the people of the sea is another aspect. They changed that. Why? Because he wanted to bring in a whole thing of the current status of the immigration question in the West. And so we got to bring in the people of the sea in the film, even though they're not really a part of the Odyssey. We're going to bring them in anyway. And Sinon, why bring in Sinon? Well, because he wanted again to bring down Odysseus. Because if you know the true story, again, the story that Sinon is actually in, he knows that the Greeks are hiding inside of the Trojan horse. When he offers it up to the Trojans, he knows that they're in there, waiting to be brought in. But yet, when you see Nolan's movie, when he sees the ghost of Sinon, Sinon chastises him, saying, "You never told me you were inside that horse. You let me. You sacrificed me. On a lie." And Odysseus says, "Well, I had to do that because I had to make sure that you were convincing to the Trojans." Now, that may sound logical to us in a reasonable way, but is that what happened in the actual story? No, it is not. It has changed. Why? So Odysseus is seen as a not so nice guy. He's not seen as so great. He lied to a warrior that he says in the film is the greatest warrior he's ever known. Which again is just laughable when you see, Elliot Page's build and stuff, and there's no way anybody of the Greek times would have said that about a guy like that. But be that as it may, there it is. It's bringing Odysseus down. He's a scumbag now. He lied to his soldier. He set him up. And so now when he sees him in the land of the dead, that's why he deserves this chastisement. And now Sinon is a victim of Odysseus. He wasn't a man who sacrificed himself for Greece. Knowingly, he was hoodwinked and lied to by Odysseus. He's a scumbag. You see how they're bringing the character down? That's what all of this is about. That's what Nolan's whole story is about, to bring Odysseus down from being this like mythological, heroic, champion to a flawed man who did a lot of bad things and is regretful for them. That's what his story is about. And that's not the Odyssey. That's not Homer's Odyssey. That's not the story. But that's the story Nolan wanted to tell. And so what he did is he took the Odyssey and made it a skin suit for the story he wanted to tell. And that's what people have issue with. This is what is wrong. This is why the casting mistakes. This is why the armor mistakes and the ship mistakes and the architecture mistakes and the language and all the other things people are coming about is because it just all points to this, that he didn't want to tell the story of the Odyssey. He wanted to tell a Christopher Nolan story about a flawed man who regrets what he's done and has brought about the end of his civilization. That's what he wanted to tell. But rather than just create a story, on another world or another time or another dimension or whatever, and tell that story, he used the Odyssey as a skin suit. One, because it probably made it easier for him. And secondly, because, again, it's about bringing Odysseus down. And what is all this coming to? It's coming to a head for a reason. And again, I'll get into that in a moment here. But this is what the real problems with the movie are. This is why people are so outraged at what they've done. But even in the wake of this, of bringing down Odysseus this way, it's still not enough. It's still not enough for these people, because as you're going to see here with what I'm about to share, they want even more. If only the women of the Odyssey were as complex as its men. So somehow this is not good enough, even though the women were given parts that they shouldn't have had. Helen getting a part in here was not necessary. And just the changing Calypso's character, changing Circe's character as they do in the film compared to Homer's text. They complain right here. See, where's it at? Penelope sat alone on the throne for 20 years. In Homer's The Odyssey, the Queen of Ithaca is a symbol of unyielding fidelity. She spends 2 decades protecting her son, Telemachus, and fending off vile suitors to defend her husband's kingdom as he makes his epic journey home from the Trojan War. While not the hero, in many ways she embodies the heart of the story. After all, what would the Odyssey be without Penelope, the woman Odysseus goes to hell and back for? And yet, Christopher Nolan's cinematic adaptation of the epic poem, Penelope feels less like the heart and more like an obligatory prize at the end of the journey. So she's not too central. She's not made this great important role. She's not played up as the woman of woman, and so it's diminishing her. And they go on to note, Penelope's not alone in her delusion. Several key complex women characters in the Odyssey feel squandered, including deities like Athena, Circe, and Calypso, all played by some of Hollywood's leading actresses. And this is far from the first time Nolan has received such criticism for women characters. He's faced similar analysis through his career. And they bring up the big one is Emily Blunt's Kitty Oppenheimer in Oppenheimer. Much like Hathaway's Penelope, Kitty Blunt's Oppenheimer is given a single moment to truly shine within the film's 180 minutes. A devoted monologue defending her husband against the false accusations in the deposition room. And let's see, Athena, for instance, is technically critical of Odysseus' survival. Without her, the Greek hero would certifiably be dead, trapped in Hades with a merry band of companions. Unlike the other gods, Athena at least has a physical form, so noting that none of the others do. Then there's Calypso, the immortal nymph played by Charlize Theron and one of the first characters we meet in Nolan's film. Odysseus washed up on her island, blah, 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 leaving him aimless. In the poem, her love of Odysseus causes conflict with Zeus. When he scolds her for taking on a human lover, she fights back, calling out his hypocrisy. In the film, though, she is simplified to a sympathetic ear and an expository tool as Odysseus gradually recalls his journey in her presence. Circe, another minor goddess, suffers a similar fate, ultimately lacking texture and falling prey to a monstrous archetype. So you see, even in giving all these women all these roles, sometimes pumping them up, giving them more screen time than they were due, it's still not enough. Oh, but they weren't made grand enough. It was the men that were never mind that the Odyssey is about Odysseus. It's his story. The strongest indictment of the absences in Nolan's adaptation, though, lies in Homer's poetry itself, which affords such care and humanity to the world in Odysseus' periphery, to the characters who orbit our mythic hero. And with such powerhouses actresses inhabiting these supporting roles, it's difficult not to fantasize about what they could have offered if given the opportunity. Penelope steered the kingdom and protected the throne for 20 years. Too bad we only know that because she states it so explicitly. So even now, they're not happy. Even the wokies aren't happy. It's not woke enough. It's not woke enough. I mean, they'll champion it so they can own the chudge. Oh, it's making money. It's a success. Ha ha, fuck you, chud boys. Yeah, they'll do that. But even here, they're not satisfied with what Nolan did. So he can't satisfy the people who wanted a faithful adaptation. He can't satisfy the wokes. It's an all-round loser, And this tells you this whole thing has never been about telling a great story, despite what some of them want you to believe. What's it really about? Well, you're going to find this hard to believe, but I found a very unconventional source that actually tells me what it's about, and it's none other than Whoopi Goldberg. Yeah, I know. I was surprised too. Now, I agree with what she says, but not why she's saying it. And so let me get in on some of this here. And Whoopi Goldberg thinks the soldiers in the Odyssey maybe should have packed a few more brain cells into that Trojan horse. The actress said during a Monday interview that she enjoyed the film immensely and that it reminded her of her contemporary social climate. Quote, the thing about this for me is it gave me a lot of today because it represents, and please don't get annoyed with me, men. It does represent the stupidity of men. Men are told in this movie, don't do this because this is going to happen. Every time they go and do that, and then they are surprised that it's going the other way. So there it is. This is why. This is why. It represents the stupidity of men. That is what this Odyssey is about. Denigrating the men, denigrating Odysseus. This is why he's not shown as this great charismatic leader that we know he was in Homer's version. This is why he's not wily and clever like we know in Homer's version. This is why he's a dour, sour, guy filled with regrets and anguish and torment and guilt. Because he wants to bring them down. And why would they do that? The only reason I can see is because this is their view of Western culture. This is what it's about. This is, again, why so many people have a problem with this. Because they can see that. They are trying to dumb down Western culture to say, it's not so great. Western culture isn't great. And again, you saw with some of the earlier bits I showed you, they shown you that, that they can't keep certain people out, like Elon Musk, Trump, right-wingers. They're telling you what this is about. They hate the West, they hate the culture, and they want to alter it and change it and bring it down. That's what this is. So we're going to do that by making your heroes not so great. And again, look at what they say about, about MAGA. What's MAGA? Make America great again. And what do all these types always say when you bring that up? When was America ever great? As if to say it never has been, because in their minds, it's not. America's not great. Western culture isn't great. It's never been great. It's only been oppressive. It's only been evil. It's only been destructive. And so therefore we need to bring it down. And this is how you do it. This is how you do it. By taking classic literature like this and subverting it to the point that it's not even what it's supposed to be. This is supposed to be a story of a man on a journey to get home to who he loves and all the trials and tribulations he goes through, but yet he gets through them through the strength of his will and his wits and his clever cunning and his tactical mind. That's what it's supposed to show. A man who went out and sought, sought power and glory in doing what he did. But they don't want any of that in this movie. They don't want any of that. They want the exact opposite. This guy is a buffoon. He's an idiot. He's created the problems that he's worried about. He's created, they talk about the destruction of his world by the people of the sea, but they want to say, no, it's not the people of the sea that destroyed his world. It was him. He destroyed it. He destroyed the world of the Bronze Age. He did that because Western culture was never that great. That's what this is about. And I just, and again, you can see that it's hard to accept that these people have any true understanding of the history and the lore that they're using, and they don't care if they do. And so that's why you're seeing the pushback that you've seen is the changes made to the story, the changes made to the characters in the story is all to service the progressive ideology. And why is Nolan doing this? Is he a true believer? I don't know. Maybe, or maybe he's being pushed into it. I mean, I've seen interviews with Nolan where he's on the red carpet with his wife and people ask him about the movie. And then what's he say? He says, oh, well, just ask. And this is the person you need to talk to. And he points to his wife. Well, why would she be the one to talk to? You're the director of the film, aren't you? Or is she the director of the director? Again, is there a reason? And why keep promoting Emily Wilson's feminist interpretation of the Odyssey over one of the other more accurate interpretations, which Nolan has done in many interviews? You see, these questions arise, and you start to see that all of this is being done from a political angle. So the success that the movie has seen thus far, shows you that they don't care about successful movies and good movies and bad movies. It's all about the progressive narrative. And they're willing to throw anything and anyone to the wolves if necessary, like they did with Ghostbusters 2016 now, and The Little Mermaid live action, and all these others that failed. They're brushing them off now, saying, well, we got our champion now, we have our success. Here's the Odyssey that's woke and it's successful. So it's not wokeness that is a failure, it's just these were bad movies. But yet they didn't say that at the time. When those movies came out, we were told they were great movies, and we were just bigots because we didn't see that. You can see how disingenuous these people are. But that all goes to a little something here from someone I've seen as a person who always has a very good take on a lot of this stuff in the culture. And I'm gonna play that for you now here. I got a little video here to show you from the always great Eric July, and I'm just gonna let him tell it to you here. So let me put on the closed captioning, and here we go.
Okay, so the Odyssey is a topic of conversation, and yet again, one thing I'm realizing is that these people that claim to be such anti-punditry, they're not against punditry. They look at everything that comes out in media and entertainment through the lens of owning the chuds and the people that they despise. So they're not against folks having aggressive, inflammatory positions at all, because they themselves have aggressive, inflammatory positions. They just think that they're the only ones allowed to actually voice it. I've said in the past, I empathize with the position of maybe speaking a little more about the things that we like, things that we enjoy. Creators getting out there, creating those alternatives. I'm with you on that. The problem is that many of the people that throw that stuff out there, not liking that there's YouTubers or the quote unquote right wing chuds and the things that they say, it's not a position that you universalize. You're always going after folks because they have a differing opinion. So either all of it's okay. You want those inflammatory conversations because punditry is an easy thing to do. It gets a lot of engagement. It's part of the conversation, but either none of that stuff is okay or, all of it is. You aren't the only ones allowed to have those conversations.
And there you go. There you go. This is what this all comes down to. All this people talking about, owning the judge, that's what this movie was about. That's what it's all been about, because they want to bring down Western culture and reimagine it in their progressive ideological viewpoint. That is why. And that is why they care so much, about how the movie does at the box office. They don't care if the movie was actually any good or not. They just care that it invigorates their woke progressive values and makes it seem that it can be successful. That's all that matters to them. This movie, they don't care about history. They don't care about good movies. What they care about is this. And, this is what needs to be said and needs to be thought of more. And so when when the normies go out and see this movie, maybe they're just seeing a movie, but it's saying a lot more than they want to believe. And I just think it's very telling that they're so willing to throw former compatriots like Ghostbusters 2016 under the bus now, because they think they have the ultimate cudgel now to use against those who would speak out against, the wokeness in film and in entertainment. Because we've seen this all along. We've seen this throughout every aspect of entertainment, in music, in comics, in television, in video games. It's all the same. They all do the same thing, which is to denigrate what has come before, because they do not like the ideals they represent. They do not like the culture it represents. And so what they do is they have to destroy it and change it. And that's what you're seeing here. With the Odyssey, that's what this is. It's just another symbol for them to alter to be what they want it to be, rather than for it to be what it's supposed to be. Having this person playing a Grecian warrior is stupid. It stymies me how we can sit here and look at this and think that this is all okay, and that anybody who has a problem with it, well, you're just a racist, sexist bigot. No, we're not. We're someone who cares about the culture we live in. And what this truly is about is these people hate our culture. They hate the West. I mean, we see them every day. And everything you see happening in our world today stems from this. All the attacks on ICE and the demands that no Trump, no wall, no USA at all. Just to deal, telling you you're living on stolen land. You know why they say that? To delegitimize the nation. To say you don't have a right to borders because your nation is illegitimate, because you stole the land. So therefore, none of this is legitimate. So you have no right to have a border. You have no right to, have a culture. Your culture is illegitimate. And then they want to just say that, so that's why they do that. When the birth rates in the West are down. Why? Because of being, demoralized. That's what they're doing with stuff like this Odyssey movie, is they want to demoralize the West to the point that they can take them down. Because see, all of this stems from butthurt from centuries ago, when the Europeans went around the world and conquered. See, like I said, they say it's stolen land, but it's not stolen, it's conquered. And there's a difference. Stolen is if you put something on a table and I grab it and run away with it, that's stealing. Conquered is, here's something on the table, I want it and you want it, so we fight to see who gets it, and to the victor goes the spoils. And the problem is the Europeans were the victors and these other groups weren't. And so they want to get revenge. That's what all activism is at its heart. 90% of all activism is just revenge. I want revenge on the people who I couldn't beat. Revenge on the people who I don't like. That's all it is. That's why, you see things like blackwashing, like this. They don't have a problem with that. Black Anne Boleyn, Black Cleopatra, Asian, Sir Isaac Newton. It's all good to do that because, hey, it's representation. But if it was about representation, why don't you just tell stories about, African, or like, again, let's use their example as a Little Mermaid. Little Mermaid from 2025. Why take Hans Christian Andersen's story and just race swap Ariel? Why not? Did they not know that there was actual African lore about mermaids? That they could have told stories about those tribes of African mermaids? Why not tell those stories? Isn't that give you representation? Of course it does. But what doesn't it give you? It doesn't take away something from the people you hate. It doesn't take away from the culture you hate. And that's why they want to race swap and gender swap and do these things, because it takes away from that culture, from that group that they hate. The group who defeated them on the battlefields, the group who defeated them in conquering. And they know they can't do that. They can't beat them there. So instead, let's go into the culture and destroy it from within. And that's what this is. It's a slow march to the destruction of your culture. That's all it is. That's all it's ever been. And, again, once you see the patterns, like I'm seeing them now, you can't unsee them. It's there all the time. In everything you do and everything you see, it's there, and it's like, I feel like in a way I've woken up to some things because of this film, because of the stuff that I'm seeing in the real world and how it all is interconnected. This is not all happening by accident. This is not all just some random happenstance. There is an intent behind all of it. And that's what they don't want you thinking about. That's what they do. So when Nolan is doing these changes, it's not just changes just for the sake of change. There is an intent behind it. And why he would want to bring down Western culture, I don't know. Maybe he's a useful idiot, as Lenin has named such types. I don't know. Like I said, I can't read the man's heart. But whether he's doing it out of cowardice, stupidity, or true belief, the end result is always the same. And I think this is going to hurt him in the long run. Because, these kinds of things do have a knock-on effect. Like, look at Star Wars, for example. Think back to when The Force Awakens came out. It made over $2 billion, the box office. It was huge. Everybody went to see it. Even I went to see it. Why? Because we all believed in Star Wars. We had good vibes, good feelings, good remembrances of Star Wars. And we like, hey, I want to see what happens next. They had the goodwill of the fan base, of the people who love it. And so they went out and saw the film. But then what happened after that? The next couple films, diminishing returns. Why? Because they saw they were not being faithful to what it was. They were not showing the respect to the audience, to the IP, to what it stood for. And they responded accordingly. And I think the same thing is going to happen in Nolan. He banked his name and reputation with this film. And it's not landing, I think, the way they thought it was going to. Oh, they're championing the success it's seeing at the box office at the moment. But do I think this is going to be one of the great films in the pantheon of Nolan's catalog? I don't think so. In fact, I think it's probably going to be near the bottom. And in 6 months to a year, no one's going to be talking about the Odyssey. No one's going to care anymore. I mean, there's still other movies of his they'll talk about, like Oppenheimer still gets talked about. People still talk about, the Batman movies he did. People still talk about, Inception. They still talk about, The Prestige. I still hear people talk about those films because those are great films that he created. I don't think Odyssey is going to be in that category. I think he has damaged himself more than he realizes in what he's done here with this film. And, it's sad that he went that route. And like I said, I don't know why he would, but it seems that's what he wanted. But what the people want seems to be something quite different compared to what Nolan and that ilk there want. And I can prove that, somewhat scientifically with this little thing right here that I'm about to share with you guys. This is a poll on my community page, which is linked down below, so you guys can go in and join with it. I put this out when I did my last Odyssey live stream, and I said, should Hollywood respect Western culture and its products the same way it does foreign cultures, like the way they went out of their way for the Moana live action to be so accurate and talking to people who know the culture of the Polynesians so that it could be right. Shouldn't they treat Western culture with that same type of reverence and respect? And as you can see here from my semi, scientific poll here, 75% say yes, they should. There is those who say they shouldn't. And then, of course, there's your guys who the ones who like to come in and just pick out the silliest one to laugh at. But I think this right here is the important part. 75% say yes. So it seems to me I'm on to something with this, that the hunger for respect of Western culture is there. And for guys like Nolan to not, show it is a very sad thing. And like I said, so what do I ultimately think is going to happen with the Odyssey? I don't know. It's tough to say. It's really tough to say what's going to happen with the Odyssey because, like I said, there's definitely a lot in its favor. I've mentioned a few times what's going on with it as far as its box office is going, but pardon me. Sorry, folks. A little technical problems here. It's how it goes sometimes. There we go. Yeah. So what's going to be the ultimate fate of the Odyssey? I think the film will make a profit. Sadly, I don't think it should. Like I said, I think it deserves the bomb, but it's not going to do that. Again, barring some major sea shift in the next couple of weeks in the viewing habits of the public, that's not going to happen. But will it be the success that the studios want it to be? I don't think it will. I don't think it's going to hit the marks they want. They want that Deadpool Wolverine money. That's what they want for this. And like I said, it needs to break 800 million to start hitting profit. So, I think it will do that. It will break that number, but will it break past the billion mark? That's much more cloudy. And again, like I said, there's a lot that can happen in the time for it to get there. And the money they've gotten, they've made back their marketing budget, but it's still a long road to hoe to get to where they need it to be. And again, even if they do make a profit, let's say it gets to $850 million, which would definitely be in the black. That puts it about $75 to $100 million above break-even mark. Okay, they made a profit. But tell me, do studios put together films to make small profits? No, they want the big profit. Like I said, they want that 1.3 billion that Deadpool and Wolverine saw, doubling what they spent. That's what they're looking for. And I don't think they're going to get that with this. This is not one of Nolan's best, despite what some are trying to say about it. And again, as you saw with the clips of the articles, the reasons they're saying it's the best isn't because the film is actually great. It's because it's owning the chuds. It's validating their woke ideology that can be successful. That's what it says to them, and that's what matters to them. They don't care what the story actually is. They don't care whether it's a good movie or not. They don't care if it even hurts Nolan's career or not. All that matters is now they have a new champion that they can throw in the face of people to say, go woke, go broke isn't true. And that's all that matters to them. And that's a pretty sad fate for a classic piece of literature that's been around for 3,000 years to have that be its epitaph, that it was the salvation for woke, validation. And, it's just sad. But, so that's my take. Probably won't be doing another video here on the Odyssey unless something really major happens. Like I said, if it takes that nosedive that I don't think is going to happen, I'll probably come back out with another video. But short of that, I don't think there's much more to say. The movie's out. It's going to make the money that, to be profitable, but it's going to be profitable enough for the studios? Probably not. Is it going to damage Nolan's career? I think so. It is going to be a movie that people are going to remember and talk about for years and years to come? I don't think so. So, just another case of, a little premature celebrating, I think, on the part of the Wokies. Thinking that they now have the new champion that they need to silence any critics in the future. Because I don't think this is going to do it. I really don't. Because for them to win, they're going to have all their woke stuff do this every single time. And, this had a lot of stuff backing it that most of that stuff doesn't. And, so I don't know. We're just going to see, I guess, but that's my take on it. And there you go. That's about all I got put together for this. Since nobody's here, I guess I won't be putting in the link to the live stream so that others can join me in the chat, because there's no one to join me. But for those of you who did watch some of this, I appreciate that. If you're watching this later on, I appreciate that as well. I'll be back with some more stuff in the near future, because I'm always working on things, as you know. But I just wanted to get this out there because I did make my predictions about what the film would do. And so far, it's on par to what I said, which is, I expected a big opening. But is it going to have the legs it needs to become, super profitable, like a Deadpool and Wolverine? And I don't think it will. I don't think it's going to get there. It may hit profitable territory. I definitely think that is definitely has a chance for that. But beyond that, I don't think it's going to make the marks that the studios and Nolan himself is probably hoping it would. I think it's going to fall a little short of that. But that's just my take. Let me know what you guys think down below. I want to hear what you got to say. Also, be sure to check out some of those links down there, especially the community page. Like I said, I'm always putting up new polls all the time, so to get you guys ideas on what you're thinking about this stuff. And sometimes it even helps me decide what I'm going to do for a video. So, your voice matters around here. It may not matter to Nolan. It may not matter to the studios. It may not matter to the lamestream media, but it matters here. So I want you guys to know that. And thank you again for stopping by and checking this out. And I will be back soon with some more stuff. And until next time, take care.